Hello students, this is Hardik sir and today we are starting our part 4 from History Standard 8. The title of the lesson is From Trade to Territory, where the company establishes its rule. Company, I want to say, that is EEIC, English East India Company, started establishment as we have already seen with the third part. So if you have not seen the third part yet, I request you to go through the third part once again very carefully. And for this video also, please watch this video till the end. Don't skip it after every few minutes. So please keep watching properly. Company rule expands, that is the part which we are going to start today itself. So how it established the rule, that we have already studied, but how it expanded with the rules. We have seen that with the suggestion of Robert Clive that the company itself should be a Nawab, and that also process has been completed with the previous part. So if we analyze this entire process, that from 1757 to 1857, the process of expansion has taken place by the company. So there are number of key aspects which we are going to see. The company actually started launching number of military attack. It means it has rarely done such activity. The company has rarely launched such military attack on unknown territory. Apart from that, it used a number of other ways, means there were some political, economical or diplomatic methods through which it started to extend its kingdom, its part in India, controlling more and more territories under it. After the Battle of Buxar, if we see, the company appointed residents. Now who were these residents? So they were basically from Britain, they were English agents, they were political or commercial agents, as we know this. So they were political or commercial agents, and what was their duty? What was their job? And their job was to serve the interest of the company. Means they had to work only for the benefits of the company. It was the target given to them. So after Battle of Buxar, company started appointing some residents who were actually commercial or political agents, and their job was only to bring more and more territories under company, or else to work for the interest of the company, for the benefit of the company. And with the help of these residents, the company officials began interfering internal affairs of the Indian states. Means now the role of interfering gets started after Battle of Buxar. So they tried to decide who was to be the successor. Means it is not their duty, because the Indian state who was the ruler, it is his or her duty to decide that who would be his or her successor. But apart from them, now these residents actually started this, because they had also some role with the politics, and who was to be appointed in administrative post. So with the administrative post also, they started deciding that who should be the appointed at what level. So sometimes the company forced the states into subsidiary alliance. And now what is subsidiary alliance? It is again an important question for 1 mark also. It is very important. So subsidiary alliance, according to the term, means what were the conditions, terms and conditions of subsidiary alliance. Subsidiary alliance means that Indian rulers were not allowed to have their independent armed forces. Means now the Indian rulers will not have any kind of army under their own control. They were to be protected by the company. Means this protection was given to the rulers by the company, but in turn the Indian rulers had to pay for the subsidiary forces. Means the payment for these forces was to be given by Indian rulers. That company actually maintained this for purpose of its protection. Means for the purpose of the Indian rulers protection, company managed the subsidiary forces, and the maintenance cost and all the payments were to be given by Indian rulers. If Indian rulers failed to make the payment, if now they have no money to pay much, then their territory would be taken away as penalty. Thus they started expanding. As you can understand, if a ruler is not able to pay for these forces, because ruler himself was not able to keep his own armed force, so he had to be dependent on these subsidiary forces, and for that he had to pay. If he or she fails to make the payment, then his part would be taken away, his territory would be taken away as penalty. So we have an example when Richard Wellesley was the Governor General 1798 to 1805. By that time, what had happened? So the Nawab of Awadh was forced to give over half of its territory to the company by 1801. So Nawab of Awadh had to pay half of its territory because he failed to pay for subsidiary alliance. Same also happened with Hyderabad, that was also forced to cede territories on same grounds. Similar grounds means because of the same reasons. So Hyderabad also lost some of its territories because of subsidiary alliance. So you should know that the territories of Awadh and as well as Hyderabad were given to the EEIC because they failed to make the payment of subsidiary forces, and because of that, during the rule of Richard Wellesley, their territories were also taken away. So with the upcoming part, we are here helped with Tipu Sultan, as you have already heard about him in the previous standard. We have studied in 7th standard. So Tipu Sultan, here you can find the picture of Tipu Sultan. In your textbook also you can look at closely and also go through once again the lesson very carefully, read it once very carefully. So if you have any query, any doubts, you can ask in your comments. Tipu Sultan, famous, very known as Tiger of Mysore. The company resorted to directly military confrontation when it saw a threat to its political or economic interest. When company found any threat by both the means, either by political or economical means, then it always had directly military confrontation, means it was ready to attack on the directly to the battlefield. But we have some example that we have in the southern Indian state of Mysore. Now we have a brief introduction about Mysore and its rulers. Mysore actually had grown very much under the leadership of powerful rulers like Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan. Hyder Ali ruled from 1761 to 1782 and Tipu Sultan ruled from 1782 to 1799. Tipu Sultan was the son of Hyder Ali and was successor also as a next ruler of Mysore. Mysore was able to control a very profitable trade from Malabar coast. As we have already studied in geography, Malabar coast, Konkan coast, Coromandel coast and even northern Sirkas. So we have studied all these parts in geography. So Mysore had a very profitable trade from Malabar coast. The company used to purchase paper and cardamom. By 1785, Tipu Sultan, who stopped the export of sandalwood, pepper and cardamom through the ports of his kingdom. So when this was stopped, and he also disallowed the local merchants from trading with the company. So now local merchants also stopped trading with company, and he also established a close relationship with the French in India. So this thing the company could not bear. It stopped the trading with EEIC and started building up good relationship with French, and also modernized his army with their help, means he had taken the help of French. British were furious because of these reasons. They saw Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan as ambitious, arrogant and dangerous rulers who had to be controlled and crushed. So for them, Hyder and Tipu, ultimately they were dangerous, and that's why for the expansion of the company, it was necessary to crush them, and that's why 4 wars were fought, as we have already seen. So different, after the end of 4 wars, ultimately the last and the final war where it was fought in Seringapatam, Tipu Sultan was killed defending his capital Seringapatam, and by that time we can say that it was the clear victory. This was ultimate win, ultimate victory for EEIC. Mysore was placed under the former ruling dynasty of Voders, and a subsidiary alliance was also imposed on the state. So subsidiary alliance was also imposed, means through that alliance, as we have seen, that armed forces would be under the control of EEIC, and EEIC will only decide whether the state needs to start a battle or fight with another state or not. Those all decisions will be taken by company. So thus ultimately the end of Mysore also you can find such a part. We can find that in southern India also now company was able to expand its territory. After this picture of Tipu's toy tiger, as we have seen, so there are number of things, number of information given, please go through carefully. Now if we start something about wars with Marathas. So Marathas, basically if you would have heard the name Peshwa, Peshwa means a principal minister. So why and who was this Peshwa? Peshwa was a principal minister because these were the people, they were divided into number of different tribes, number of different societies, number of different dynasties. So as you can see, such dynasties like Scindia, Holkar, Gaikwad and Bhosle. So these chief, the chief of Scindia, the chief of Holkar, like that, these chief altogether worked together under a Peshwa. Now come back to the top part, introduction. So from the late 18th century, company sought to curb and destroy Maratha power. It started to destroy Maratha power, and Maratha power was actually destroyed when it got defeat in Battle of Panipat, third Battle of Panipat, which was fought in 1761. So as company wanted to destroy Maratha power, but with the help of third Battle of Panipat, Marathas themselves became very big, very weak. This fight was not actually fought against EEIC, it was fought against Afghan ruler. The Marathas' dream to control Delhi now was shattered. That dream was also now destroyed, because Marathas were the only that who might have most probably able to crush the EIC, but unfortunately their dream also was now shattered because they were defeated in the third battle of Panipat, and then they were divided into number of states, and there were number of dynasties as we have already seen. So now Peshwa, ultimately under a Peshwa, these all chiefs were working. So who became effective military and administrative head, and his office was based in Pune. So Peshwa was a principal minister, would be looking after all the dynasties of Marathas, and he was military and administrative head. His office was based in Pune. So we have one example here. We are given number of soldiers. Mahadji Scindia and Nana Fadnis were two famous Maratha soldiers and statesmen of the late 18th century. The Marathas were subdued in a series of wars, means they also had to fight number of wars. So the first war ended in 1782, and how did this war end? This war didn't see any clear victory or a major victory for any of these, neither for EEIC nor for Marathas. So this war ended with the Treaty of Salbai, and Salbai is a place where the treaty was actually taken care of, means processed, and there was no clear victor. The second Anglo-Maratha war, which ranged from 1803 to 1805, was fought on different fronts, resulting in the British gaining Orissa and the territories north of the Yamuna river, including Agra and Delhi. So in this part, British gained something. As you can see, British gained Orissa and the territories of north of Yamuna. So with this second war, we can find that Britishers won the parts of Orissa, the territories of the north of the river Yamuna, in that including Agra and Delhi. So this we can see with the end of second war, the British had a number of benefits. But after the third Anglo-Maratha war, they ultimately crushed Marathas by 1817 to 1819. Now the Peshwa was removed and sent away to Bithur near Kanpur with a pension. So now there were no office, now no more offices, no more administrative or military head. Now Peshwa was only receiving pension, and his role now was completely now no more. Means he had now no rule. So the company now had complete control over the territories of south of the Vindhyas. So thus we are finding that with this second war, means we have already seen about Anglo-Mysore wars. There were 4 wars fought. Anglo-Maratha, there were 3 wars fought, and after the end of the third war, ultimately the Marathas were crushed. So now we are only going to see that how the British claimed for paramountcy. Now what actually word paramountcy mean? Paramount, it means to say supreme, only that it is given here, paramount or supreme. Now they started believing that they were the supreme only in India, because they were able to defeat any of the Indian rulers, and they have proved this. So it is clear from above, as we have already seen, that in the early 19th century, the company pursued an aggressive policy of territorial expansion. This was aggressive policy as they fought number of wars and started expanding their territories. So under Lord Hastings, who was Lord Hastings? So under Lord Hastings, Warren Hastings, he was the Governor General from 1813 to 1823, and he brought this policy of paramountcy. He initiated this policy of paramountcy. Now the company started claiming that it was its authority because they were the supreme, means its authority was paramount or supreme, because they had the power and also greater than of all Indian states. Means now they had increased their power, they had expanded their territories, so now they were only greater and they should be considered as paramount or supreme. And in order to protect its interest, it was justified in annexing or threatening to annex any Indian kingdom. So if any kingdom protest against this, so for their protection they started annexing its territories. As we are going to see that under this process, however, it didn't go to any unchallenged. For example, when British tried to annex small state of Kittur, which is Karnataka, you can find the name Rani Channamma. So Rani Channamma actually took to arms and led anti-British resistance movement because no ruler was ready to agree, and she, being a lady, also started resistance movement. She was arrested in 1824 and died in prison in 1829. But we have another name, that is Rayanna, who was a poor chowkidar of Sangoli in Kittur, means from the same state Karnataka. Rayanna, after her, he carried out the same resistance with the support, and with his support he was able to destroy many British camps and records. He was caught and hanged by the British in 1830s. So ultimately in 1830 he was hanged, and we are going to study much about these several cases of resistance, means of revolt, when Indian people started protesting against EIC in the upcoming chapters of the book. But we are here also helped with something more important, that is about the Punjab. So how the state of Punjab was annexed, we are going to see with this part. So in the late 1830s, the East India Company became worried about Russia, because Russia, as it had started expanding much, so it imagined that Russia might expand across Asia and also can enter India from northwest. So they had a fear that if Russia enters in India, then for their territory expansion, Russia can be a big player or a big competitor for them. So driven by this fear, because of this fear, the British now wanted to secure their control over northwest territories. So after a long war with Afghanistan, after the prolonged war with Afghanistan, which ranged from 1838 to 1842 and established indirect company rule there, means Afghanistan was also now after 1842 under the indirect control of company. Sindh was taken over in 1843, which is a major part. So Sindh, that was controlled in 1843, and next in line was Punjab. But because of the presence of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the company was not able to gain its control very soon. So Singh ultimately he died after Ranjit Singh's death, means Ranjit Singh died, Maharaja Ranjit Singh died in 1839, and then there were two wars fought with the Sikh kingdom, means ultimately Anglo-Sikh wars also took place, and ultimately by 1849 Punjab was also now under British, means Punjab was also annexed. From the doctrine of lapse we will be starting by the next part. Till then, keep learning. Thank you.